I hope that you grow this week as we study the Word of God together, as we approach His holy Word and we learn together. I hope that it's encouraging to you. I hope that it's edifying in your life. I hope that it'll give you some things to think about so that we might learn to be pleasing to God more and more. Because this journey that we're on is a wonderful journey. It's filled with trials, it's filled with heartache, it's filled with headache, but it's absolutely worth it. And this morning we're going to talk about a story from the Old Testament, as you see here in 2 Chronicles chapter 18. Timothy and I were talking about this before services. There is so much depth, there is so much value, there is so much to learn and be gained from studying the things of the Old Testament. And we're going to study a story this morning that I believe that will be very beneficial for us. There's many things for us to learn and many things for us to grow from these things. And this is an interesting account here in 2 Chronicles 18. And there's a parallel account of this in 1 Kings 22 for your reference. But this is the story of two kings and a prophet during a time when the children of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, had become divided. And the people, they strayed back and forth from serving God. And we understand that once the kingdom of Israel divided and the Assyrians took over Egypt and Israel, there was this division of kingdoms, and there was the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. And this happens during that time. Long after the time of Solomon and David and their first king Saul, but this account takes place there. So just to give us a little backstory about these two kings. The first king that's in this story is Ahab. Ahab was the seventh king of Israel. This was the northern kingdom, and this is what the Bible says about Ahab. This is the record that we have of this king Ahab. It says in 1 Kings chapter 16, it says, "And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians. And he went and served Baal, and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab did a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him." That is how wicked and evil this northern king was. We understand that the northern kingdom had a problem with idolatry consistently. And their kings were given over to that, and they did not want to serve the Lord God. This was Ahab. As you continue studying and learning through this book of 1 Kings, when you approach chapter 20, you learn about this conflict that took place between Israel, this northern kingdom, under Ahab's leadership, and Syria. You see, the king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, he rose up against Ahab. He defied God and challenged him openly and said, "Who is this God? He is no God. There's been no God that is able to stand before me, and your God is no different, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to take over your lands." And that's exactly what he did. And God wanted to exact judgment upon him. God took an opportunity to exact judgment against Syria and prove that he was the true God. He is the Lord. And so he used Ahab, and he sent Ahab to go and destroy him and to go and conquer him. But Ahab, he failed. Ahab failed. Ahab is victorious over Syria. Ben-Hadad comes to him and he pleads for his life, and he pledges to restore conquered lands back to Ahab. And so Ahab agrees. It seems like Ahab has an affinity for land. He wants to be a great landowner. But he agrees, and so he lets Ben-Hadad go, and God is very displeased with this act. This is one of the failures of Ahab. We see all the other failures that are described here in the Bible. The next thing you read about Ahab is a man named Naboth, who owns a vineyard that Ahab really wants. There's a piece of land that Ahab just really wants. And so he approaches Naboth about it, and Naboth refuses to sell it. It was a family piece of land. It was something he had inherited from his family. He refuses to sell it. He refuses to trade it. And so Ahab, we learn, becomes a big pouty baby, literally, lying down and refusing to eat. And he turns his face to the wall. He refuses to eat or drink. And he just goes into this deep depression because this man turned him down at his offer to buy his land. Well, as we mentioned here, as we read here in 1 Kings 16, he had married Jezebel. And she was a wicked woman, Jezebel. She devises this plan to kill Naboth and has false witnesses rise up against him. And so she kills him so that Ahab can rise up and take that field. And then Ahab's all cheerful and happy because now he got what he wanted. And again, God is very displeased with this, and so he pronounces judgments against Ahab. and against Jezebel, and he says to them, the same place where the dogs lick the blood of Naboth, they will lick your blood. So God here pronounces a punishment of death upon him and a pronouncement of death upon him. So that is coming for Ahab. That's how wicked and evil this king was, and this is one of the characters in this story that we're going to focus on in 1 Kings 18. Ahab, a wicked king. On the other hand, you have Jehoshaphat. He is fifth in the line of David. He's a direct descendant of King David. He is the fourth king of Judah. He is the king over the southern kingdom. He was a man that was good. He followed after righteousness. In 2 Chronicles 17, we read, "And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead and strengthened himself against Israel. And he placed forces in all the fenced cities of Judah and set garrisons in the land of Judah and the cities of Ephraim, which Asa his father had taken. And the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the first ways of his father David and sought not to Baalim, but sought to the Lord God his father and walked in his commandments and not after the doings of Israel. Therefore the Lord established the kingdom in his hand, and all Judah brought to Jehoshaphat presents, and he had riches and honor in abundance, and his heart was lifted up in the ways of the Lord. Moreover, he took away the high places and the groves out of Judah." This was the great king that came along. See, Judah had sometimes suffered with idolatry, and sometimes they didn't. And at these instances like this, where Jehoshaphat would come in, kings like Jehoshaphat, they would come in and they would take away the high places. They would take away the groves. They would take away the idols out of the land. And they would restore order, and they would restore harmony to following the word and the will of God. And that's exactly the kind of king Jehoshaphat was. He was a righteous king. He removed these idols. It even goes on to talk about an administration that he set up of priests and of teachers to go out and teach the law throughout all the land. And they were doing that, and the land was prosperous because of that. The people were peaceful because of that. Fear fell upon all the land, it says, and no one made war with him. He prospered greatly. And his army, it grew, and they were in strength. They had so much in number. They had over 1 million in their army. They were over 1 million strong. Mighty military force, but they didn't use it often. God would deliver them through these battles. God was with them. Fear was on all the land. They were following the will of the Lord. So you have this righteous king. Evil king, Ahab, idol worshiper, killing people to take their land. Evil wife, Jezebel. And you have a righteous king, on the other hand. Restores order. He's following the will of God. He removes idols. And then something takes place when we get to 2 Chronicles 18. It had been 3 years of peace between Syria and Israel. This is 3 years after Ahab let Ben-Hadad go. And God was displeased with this, but there was peace between Syria and Israel. There wasn't anything going on. And what we learn about is that the people began to rile up Ahab. Ahab's men said, "Hey, they have these lands still. There are still some lands that they didn't give back to us, and they were ours to begin with, and so we need to go up and rise up against them and go to war with them." And so Ahab was convinced to do this. But we learned that during this time of peace, during this 3-year period, that Jehoshaphat had entered into an alliance with Ahab. In 2 Chronicles 18, verse 1, it says, "Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance and joined affinity with Ahab." I didn't know what that word affinity meant, so I had to look that up. And that means that he entered into a marriage alliance with Ahab. Now, it wasn't uncommon in those times, and there's probably places in the world that still do this, where they will marry off one of their sons to another king's daughter for political advantage. And they'll make these arranged marriages between their children so that they can solidify some kind of contract with them or some kind of peace between them and some kind of alliance. And this is what Jehoshaphat, the good king, did with this evil king. He gave his son Jehoram to be the wife, or the husband rather, of Ahab's daughter. In 2 Kings 8, verse 18, for that reference, it shows us that Ahab's daughter was given to Jehoshaphat's son. And so he enters into a marriage alliance with the king of Israel. Now, he goes to Ahab. We continue in this story. In verses 2 and 3, it says, "And after certain years, he went down to Ahab to Samaria. And Ahab killed sheep and oxen for him in abundance, and for the people that he had with him. And he persuaded him to go to Ramoth Gilead." Because this is what the people were saying. Let's go and take Ramoth-Gilead. Let's go and fight the Syrians. And Ahab says, okay. And so Jehoshaphat comes along, and he kills this sheep and oxen, and he makes this great feast for him, and he persuades him to go with him into this battle. And he says, the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, will you go with me to Ramoth-Gilead? And he answered him. This is Jehoshaphat's answer to this wicked king. I am as thou art. My people are as thy people, and we will be with thee in war. That's a perplexing answer from this righteous king who takes away idols when he goes to this king who sets up idols and worships Baal and makes groves for him and makes up these temples for him and has a wife who is an idol worshiper. My people are as your people? They weren't. Yet Jehoshaphat apparently is blinded by the persuasion of this wicked king. And that's what that word we find there. He was persuaded. Strong's talks about this word as being seduced, being enticed. He was being moved into this. And so Jehoshaphat allows himself to be persuaded. He agrees to go into this war alongside Ahab to Ramoth-Gilead, to take Ramoth-Gilead back from Syria. My people are as your people. Before battles in the Old Testament, what we read about is it was customary for the kings to ask the prophets to inquire of the Lord. They wanted to make sure the Lord was with them in these battles, and they wanted to make sure they had the blessing of God before they went into this and find out if they were going to have victory or whether they were going to lose this battle or should avoid this battle altogether. And so they would ask God on behalf of the kings, and the prophets would come and they'd ask God on behalf of the kings whether or not they should do this. And so Jehoshaphat asks for this. He says, is there anybody that we can inquire of the Lord about this? And so Ahab calls together 400 prophets. 400 prophets in his kingdom. And it says, in verse 5, it says, therefore the king of Israel gathered together of the prophets 400 men and said unto them, shall we go to Ramoth-Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? And they said, go up, for God will deliver it into the king's hand. 400 men unanimously consent that the king should go up and do this thing because God was with him. But it seems like Jehoshaphat isn't quite convinced. Maybe he has a moment of, this just seems too weird. Why are there 400 men telling us this? They're all unanimously consenting to this? I don't know what it was, but Jehoshaphat he still wants more confirmation than 400 prophets coming to him and saying, the Lord has He's delivered it. God will deliver it into the king's hand. He wants something more. And so he asks, he says, is there anybody else? Is there not a prophet of the Lord that we can inquire of? Now, I don't know if he's saying, if he recognized that these men were not prophets of the Lord, or if he just wasn't quite sure about it. He was uneasy about something. And so he asks this question. And so Ahab reluctantly tells him about this one man. He says in verse 7, about, there is yet one man by whom we may inquire of the Lord, but I hate him. For he never prophesies good to me, but always evil. The same as Micaiah, the son of Imlah. And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. Jehoshaphat's answer after he said this man always, I hate this guy. He's always saying bad things about me. He never has anything good to say about me. It's Micaiah. And he says, well, prove it. Summon him. Don't let the king say so. I don't want to take your word for it. I want to hear for myself. Summon this man. And so apparently Ahab had this man because he hated him. He had him imprisoned because he only prophesied evil in the past. And so he orders this officer to go bring Micaiah before him. Go and fetch me Micaiah, the son of Imlah, from the governor, or from the jail. And so in the meantime, the kings sit upon their thrones, and they have this pep rally, basically, and they're clothed with their robes, and it says that they sat each upon on their thrones in this empty place in the court, and they have this pep rally, and there's these 400 prophets cheering them on, telling them how great they are. And Zedekiah, the chief of the prophets, he comes to Ahab, and he makes these horns, and he says, with these horns you'll drive back the Syrians. And they're just going, I imagine just this crazy pep rally, and there's all this kind of excitement, and they're cheering him on, and you're going to do this, and you're going to win, and the Lord has delivered it to your hand, and just building up his confidence. They're just claiming the Lord has declared victory against Syria, and you're going to win this battle. Now, regarding Micaiah, we're not told in this story or in the Bible how long he had been imprisoned at this point. But I'm just going to assume it had been a while. But the officer seems to know that this man has been suffering greatly. And he has pity on him. He has compassion for him. And he seems to be just trying to help him. And he urges Micaiah, just agree with these 400 prophets. There's 400 men that are saying the Lord has given it to his hand. Just go along with it, Micaiah. And so the messenger that went to call Micaiah spake to him, saying, Behold, the words of the prophets declare good to the king with one assent. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like one of theirs, and speak thou good. Speak good words to the king. Tell him this is a good idea. Go along with everybody else. 400 men have consented to this. This could be your chance of freedom. Maybe he'll let you go if you say something good about him. Micaiah's response is really what kind of got me interested in the story. Just reading this line, I had to understand the context to find out what in the world is he talking about, and why did he give this reply. And then I started to see the greater context of the story, and it is absolutely moving. Micaiah's response to this man, As the Lord liveth, even what my God saith, that will I speak. So Micaiah is summoned. He's summoned before these kings. And, there's some things about the Bible that I find just very humorous. And there's some bits of sarcasm that are included in there at times that just kind of jump out at me. Maybe it's not meant to be sarcastic, but I think in this moment it is, to kind of show how foolish this evil king was. But Ahab, they bring Micaiah out, and he's before these kings, and Micaiah is there. And so Ahab says, okay, what should we do? Should we go to Ramoth-Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And Micaiah's answer is, go and prosper, for the Lord has delivered it into thy hand. He knew what the king wanted to hear. So he immediately starts off with that, and he tells him, and this makes Ahab angry, because he just told Jehoshaphat, this man never has anything good to say about me. So here this man comes out, and he immediately says something good about him. And so he looks foolish. Maybe he's embarrassed because he's in front of this other king. And so then he presses Micaiah, and he gets mad, and he says, how many times have I told you? I have charged you not to say anything but that which is true in the name of the Lord. Pretty interesting that this evil king is pressing this man and saying these things. Makes it seem like he's the righteous one, right? So Micaiah tells him about this vision that foretells Ahab his demise at Ramoth-Gilead, because the Lord had given him a vision that said that the king was going to die there at Ramoth-Gilead. And he says, I saw the sheep of Israel, and behold, they were without a shepherd. They were scattered. Their leader had been killed. Don't go into this battle. The Lord has not blessed this. The Lord has not given it into your hand. And now Ahab is feeling justified. Now you see, Jehoshaphat, didn't I tell you? He is against me. He has nothing to say, and he's so angry. What is Micaiah's outcome of this? Ahab is he hates this man. Never says anything good about me. And then the king of Israel said, take ye Micaiah and carry him back to Amon the governor of the city, and to Joash the king's son, and say, thus saith the king, put this fellow in prison, and feed him with bread of affliction and with water of affliction, until I return in peace. And Micaiah said, if thou certainly return in peace, then the Lord hath not spoken by me. And he said, hearken ye, all ye people. Micaiah made a declaration before all those people and said, if you come back in peace, then I am a liar, and God has not spoken by me. You are going to die. This is a hopeless battle. Don't do it. But Micaiah is put in prison. He's fled with bread of affliction and water of affliction. Greater suffering befalls this man because he stood up for what was right. He stood up and said, what the Lord saith, that is what I will speak. And this is the last we hear of Micaiah, and I believe it's likely that he remained there in affliction and he died in that prison. So the story goes on. Ahab and Jehoshaphat ride to battle against the Lord's will. In preparing for this battle, Ahab proposes this brilliant military strategy. Here he has this gullible seeming king. I don't know what was in Jehoshaphat's mind. I don't know what why in the world he would enter into this marriage alliance. I don't know why in the world he would enter into a war alliance and go along with this wicked and evil king. But he was enticed to go and do this. But Ahab's brilliant strategy is this: I'm going to disguise myself, but you wear your kingly robes when we go out into the battle. How does that sound? Okay. That's basically Jehoshaphat's answer. All right. He's gung-ho about this, and so that's what they do. Ahab disguises himself, but he makes Jehoshaphat go out there with a target on his back. And so once the battle begins, the king of Syria commands his chariot men. He says, you don't go to the left and you don't go to the right. I don't want you to battle any person or pursue any man but the king of Israel. Take him out. That was their mission. Who do you think is going to stand out? Well, the guy wearing the kingly robes. That's exactly what happens. They immediately noticed Jehoshaphat because of his robes, and they thought it was Ahab, and so they pursued him, and they came straight after him. And Jehoshaphat is scared. He doesn't know what to do, and we read that in verse 31. It says Jehoshaphat cried out, and God helped him. And these men realized, hey, this isn't. It says this isn't Ahab. When the Syrians perceived that it wasn't Ahab, they turned back and they stopped following him. Jehoshaphat I'm sure was very happy about that. But this isn't the right man, and so they turn around. Now imagine the carnage of this battle. These three kingdoms coming here together at Ramoth Gilead to battle the kingdoms of Syria, and Jehoshaphat with his army, over 1 million strong. I just imagine some kind of scene like the best I can think about is the Lord of the Rings type scene, where it's just chaos, and there is blood, and there is sword, and shield, and spear, and just this wild battle raging all about them. And Ahab somewhere in there, disguised, riding in his chariot, battling, killing Syrian after Syrian, men falling about as the ground is stained with blood. And notice what it says next. A certain man drew a bow at a venture. This means that in the midst of this crazy battle, some random guy drew his bow at random and was just shooting into the crowd. Drew his bow at random. He smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. 1,000,001 shot. He got the king of Israel between the joints of his harness. Cries out that he's hit. He tells his chariot man to go and to take him out of the battle, and he stays himself up in that chariot, wounded. He dies there that evening. 2 Kings 22 says after the battle they buried him and they washed the chariot in the pool of Samaria. The dogs licked up the blood from that pool just as the Lord had said. The hopeless battle. He died there just the way God told him he would. Seemingly that's the end of the story. But there's one more detail. What happened to Jehoshaphat? Next chapter it says, Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned to his house in peace to Jerusalem. And Jehu, the son of Hanani the seer, went out to see him. And he said to the king Jehoshaphat, shouldest thou help the ungodly and love them that hate the Lord? Therefore is wrath upon thee from before the Lord. What a question to this king. Should you love the ungodly and help the ungodly, rather, and love them that hate the Lord? Trouble ultimately befalls the house of Jehoshaphat, and his son becomes a wicked king. Why? Because of Ahab's daughter, who is the daughter of Jezebel. And they introduce this idolatry into this kingdom and this household. And his son becomes corrupt. Now, where's the application for us? What do these ancient kings and this battle have to do with us? I think we can learn a lot that will encourage us. To encourage us to be followers of God, to be courageous in the face of danger, to fight for what we should fight for. Ahab, in this story, represents the world. He made this great feast He killed sheep. He killed oxen in abundance for Jehoshaphat and his men, and he buttered him up real good. So he could say, will you go with me to this battle? Satan tempts us with the pleasures of the world. And we know this. The Bible tells us this. It's very clear in 1 John chapter 2:16. It says, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. These are the things that Satan uses to tempt us. 2 Timothy 4, verses 3 through 4, it says, the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. He entices us with the pleasures of this world. He diverts our faith with the false doctrines of this world. Ahab had 400 false prophets to convince Jehoshaphat that this was a good idea. He gets us buttered up real good, gets us comfortable, asks us to join him in a hopeless battle against the Lord that he is going to lose and that we will lose if we join in. And then he gets the religious people of the world to come along and say, this is okay. This is good. Do this. 400 false prophets says it's okay. Many people agree about false religions. There's all kinds of false ideas that are sprouting up these days. We live in this weird, people call it postmodernism, where everybody can just have their own truth and everybody can just live their own life and you can be right and I can be right. And everybody just, okay. We're constantly bombarded with false teachings, seeking to convince us that this is a godly pursuit. This battle is good, but it's not, it's hopeless. People following after their own lust, having itching ears, heaping up to themselves teachers, just the way Ahab did with those 400 prophets. He entices us, butters us up, gives us the pleasures of the world, lets us be enticed by these things and persuaded by these things, and he diverts our faith. In 2 Peter 2, verses 1 and 2, it says, but there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bringing upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. There are people claiming to be religious that are drawing people away from them, and the way of truth is being evil spoken of because of that. The apostles they did not mince words about these things. There will be false teachers, and many will follow their pernicious ways. There's all types of false religion. There's all types of false ideas about spirituality, about following Christ, about what it means to be a Christian, about what it means to be in line with the will of the Lord and in harmony with that. And Satan wants it that way. 400 prophets. They're ever before us, telling us that this is a battle we will win. This is blessed by the Lord. Go and do it. The Lord will give it into your hand. Just like Ahab disguised himself and goes into this battle and puts a target on Jehoshaphat's back, make no mistake, Satan is not your friend. And Satan is not my friend. He does not care about you. He cares about protecting himself. He wants to go into this battle with your target on the back so that you will be destroyed. It says the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. What was going on in the mind of Ahab when he says, maybe I'll disguise myself and then he'll die? He had this great affinity for wanting to conquer people's lands. Maybe he thought he could just step in and get all the land he wanted. The thief wants to steal and to kill and to destroy. And make no mistake, Satan does not care about us. He wants us to join him in a hopeless battle that we will ultimately pay the price for. Ahab represents the world doing this to us. What does Jehoshaphat represent? He represents a righteous person that gives in and that is influenced to the ways of evil. And that's the warning for us. We're trying to be the good kings. We're trying to be the good representatives of God in this world that are casting out idolatry, that are trying to be in line with His Word. We go out and teach His Word, and we go out and encourage this to happen, and we want to live in peace. We want to live in the prosperity that the Word of God brings spiritually, because it is a wellspring of joy that comes into our lives, and we want the protection of the Lord, and we want to be in harmony with the Lord. Sometimes we give in to that evil. And the message of Jehoshaphat is, don't be allies with the world. Jehoshaphat, the first thing he did, joined a marriage alliance, and then he joins into this war alliance with Ahab. God warns us about this when we're getting close to the world. Be careful, you adulterers and adulteresses. Know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? It's not okay for us to join in affinity with the world. It's not okay to enter into a war alliance with Satan, going into a hopeless battle against God. It is not okay. It makes us the enemy of God. Whosoever, therefore, will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. I think sometimes we get ourselves upset, or people get mad about this when we say don't be friends with the world, because we think, oh, well, we have all these friends that are not in the church. Does that mean we can't spend time with people or be influential in their lives? I don't think that's what it means. But it means to guard your heart. Protect yourself. Don't just give in to their evil ways and follow along with them. Be a person that's going to influence them and not let them influence you. Think about this. The Word of God is very clear. If we're friends with the world, we are the enemy of God. Be mindful of whose side you want to be on. Don't consent to the sin of the world. Jehoshaphat hears these 400 prophets and says, well, is there any prophet of the Lord that I can hear from? And he hears him pronounce this judgment that God had not blessed this battle. He tells them, you are going to die in this battle, Ahab. And so he goes along with it anyway. He asks for somebody to come along and to confirm this or deny this and say, I need more assurance. And the prophet of the Lord comes and says, don't do it, but he goes and does it anyway. Why did he even ask for anybody else if he wasn't going to listen? He goes along to help Ahab in this sin anyway. Brethren, we are surrounded by a world full of sin. It is alarming at times. It is very disconcerting at times. And very discouraging, for sure. We live in a world of sin. The Bible gives us a description of wicked people, and I feel like, and it's just because the time, I'm living in this time, but I feel like now more than ever this is true, but I'm sure every generation has felt this way about their own generation. But notice what it says in Romans 1:28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. That's exactly what's happening in our world. Constantly, people are turning away from the Lord. They are rejecting His truth. They are rejecting His existence. They are rejecting His principles. They are rejecting the godly life. And they're rejecting us because we follow those things. But he says they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. So what was the consequence of that? God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. What a list. That's the world that we're living in. And if you can't see that because we're friends with the world, it's time for us to shake that off and wake up. This list, it just jumps out to me. It sounds very familiar, and we see it on a daily basis. Don't let yourself get comfortable with it. Don't just go along with it. Romans 1:32 says, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only that do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Should we love those that hate the Lord? Should we help the ungodly in their ungodly pursuits and their hopeless battles against God? Because the judgment will fall, and those that do the things are worthy of death, but not only the people that do them, people that have pleasure in them that do them. That's scary. Don't have pleasure in the people that are hopelessly fighting against God the way Jehoshaphat did with Ahab. We're putting ourselves in danger if we approve of those things and the people that do such things. It's a very sobering thought. We have this evil king enticing us, and we have a good king who gives in. But that wasn't all the characters that we saw in the story. We saw this evil king, his 400 prophets. We saw Jehoshaphat, and we also saw Micaiah. Micaiah is the glimmer of hope. Micaiah is the encouragement for us. Micaiah is such an encouragement. Stand firm in God. That's what Micaiah represents. Stand firm in God. Speak the truth. Micaiah was encouraged to go along with the crowd. 400 men have agreed. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like one of theirs. He was encouraged to do that. He was threatened by Ahab. And the apostles faced pressure to stop preaching the truth. And they were threatened by the Jews. What did Peter say? Acts 4:17 through 20, it says, but that it spread no further among the people. This is what the Jews decided to do with the Apostle Peter and Apostle John as they began to go out and teach about Jesus Christ and the resurrection and the power that it brings to transform our lives. They said, so that it will not spread any further among the people, let us straightly threaten them and speak that they speak henceforth to no man in this name. And they called them and commanded them not to speak at all or to teach in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John answered to them, whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than to men, or more than to God rather, judge ye. For we cannot but speak the truth, and speak the things which we have seen and heard. We cannot but speak the truth. What the Lord has said, that is what we will say. And the same thing applies to us. We cannot but speak the things that God has told us in His Word. That's the charge that we have as Christians. Don't be friends of the world. Don't get enticed by the world. Don't just go along with the sins of the world. This is the way Jehoshaphat did. Be like the prophet Micaiah, and whatever the Lord has said, that is what we will do, and that is what we will teach. Follow God, even if it means that you're going to suffer for it. That's hard. That's when the pressure is turned on us. That's when we have to make a decision. Am I going to lose an opportunity to be promoted in my company because I chose to go instead to preach a gospel meeting? I chose to go to a Bible study instead of this thing that's going on at work. They're not going to like that. Maybe we suffer for that. Maybe there's more obvious things that happen in our lives that will bring us suffering if we stand up for what is right. If we say, no, it is not right, the things that are happening in this world. The things that the world is claiming are good. They're calling evil good, and they're calling good evil. And if we stand up and say, no, good is good, and evil is evil, we'll get attacked for that. So what? Micaiah suffered greatly for speaking only the truth. And being a Christian comes at a high personal cost. And I want to tell you that I have personally lost many friends and even family. That's hard. It's not easy to suffer for doing the things that are right, but make no mistake that God sees it. God sees your suffering when you choose to do what is right, regardless of your personal cost. He sees it, and He is pleased by that. And that is a great blessing. Peter, this man knows. This man is speaking from experience. He knows, he gets it. He was afraid of the personal cost that was going to come to him when it came time to profess that Jesus was the Son of God. You were with him. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. No, I don't know who this man is. No, we saw you. We know you were with him. You're one of those Galileans that has been traveling around with him as he's gone about teaching and doing these miracles, proclaiming the word of the Lord. No, I have no idea who this man is, and he begins to curse and to swear, I don't know this man. Peter is speaking from his experience now when he says, do it at all cost. Preach the name of the word at all costs. It doesn't matter what happens to you. You need to stand firm. He says, beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. It's no surprise that when the righteous stand up for righteousness, that we will be persecuted. It's not a surprise. Don't act all shocked when the world hates us because we say that things are right and certain things are wrong. That's what he's saying to the church, that some strange thing has happened to you, but instead rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Christ's suffering, that when His glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. If ye be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are ye, for the Spirit and the glory of God resteth upon you. On their part He's evil spoken of, but on your part He is glorified. Let none of you suffer as a murderer or as a thief or as an evildoer or as a busybody in other men's matters. If you're suffering because you've gone out and have sin in your life and you've made these terrible mistakes and you've done evil, Peter says you've earned that. You brought that on yourself. There's no glory in that. If you're suffering because you've done evil, that's your fault. If you're suffering because you've done what's right, that is what's pleasing to the Lord. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed. We should be ashamed when we suffer for evil. But if we're suffering because we're doing something good, do not be ashamed. But instead, let him glorify God on this behalf. And it doesn't matter if you lose your life. It does not matter if we lose our life. Preaching the gospel, we will be victorious. We will ultimately prevail. God will see that, and He will reward us for our faithfulness. Friends, we are bombarded constantly with enticements and opportunities to join in Satan's hopeless battle against God. But we have a choice that is clearest daily, whether to go along with the world or just go along and get along and not face any kind of punishment or persecution, maybe gain some kind of political advantage, maybe gain something out of it. I don't know what Jehoshaphat was seeking to gain by making this marriage alliance and this war alliance with Ahab, but he must have thought there was something beneficial. Maybe he was just trying to promote peace. My people are as your people. We are as you are. We'll go into this battle with you. Maybe he thought he was just trying to unify people. We have a choice whether to go along with the world or whether to go along with God, even if it means we suffer. And I want to encourage you, brethren, in the face of this, the craziness of this world, be like the prophet Micaiah. Whatever the Lord has said, that is what we should speak. And that is what we should do, regardless of the personal cost. It's going to hurt. It's going to cost a lot. It might cause relationships. It might cost us friendships. But Paul's words are encouraging in Romans. He says in Romans 8, verse 18, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared." They're not even worth comparing. The sufferings that we face and that we endure in this life are not even worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us in Christ Jesus. What a blessing that is. What a blessing that is. Brethren, I hope that this has been encouraging to you as we think about this. Where do our allegiances lie? Does our allegiance lie with the world? Are we being enticed by the world? Are we becoming friends of the world? Are we following the 400 prophets that are ever before us telling us that doing evil is good? Are we like the Jehoshaphat just sitting here going along with all of these things? Or are we like Micaiah, who is resisting even at his own personal cost? If you feel some sense of conviction this morning because you know, I don't know your lives. You know your lives. God knows your lives. He knows what's in your heart. You can't hide from Him. He sees everything. All things are naked and open before the eyes of the Lord. And He knows exactly what's in your heart. No matter how deep you try to hide it, God sees it. And until we come to that realization, our lives will not be prosperous. Our lives will not be peaceful. When I say prosperous, I'm not talking about materially. It doesn't matter what kind of material wealth you have in this world. That means nothing. What matters is the prosperity of your soul. You're standing with God. God will see this. And God knows. But so if you feel convicted, you feel some sense of shame, you feel like you're doing something that is not right, maybe you have joined in affinity with the world and with this evil, wicked king of this world, you can break away from that. There's hope. You won't receive condemnation from us because we know what it's like. We are people. We hurt. The blessing is that we are family and we are here to help each other. And I want to pray with you, if you feel that some sense of conviction, don't be ashamed. Do not be ashamed to come before the Lord and to have a contrite heart before Him. Never regret repenting. Maybe you're here this morning. I don't know who are visitors or who are not, unfortunately, but if you're visiting this morning and you think, I don't want to be going into a hopeless battle. I want to join into the battle that is going to win. I want to tell you that Jesus Christ is the victory. Jesus Christ has conquered death, and He invites us to join into that victory by being baptized into Christ, by joining with Him in the power of the resurrection, and living a transformed life. And you can have access to that. Everyone can have access to that freely. So if there's anybody that has a need this morning, don't wait. Don't feel ashamed. We're family. We care and we want to help. So come forward as we stand and sing.